Okay. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah, that's fine.
My name is Piper Carter. I am with the 5E Gallery and also the Digital Justice Coalition, and I'm part of the Commons. I identify as a Detroiter and a New Yorker. I identify as an African American woman. I identify as an African woman in America.
So I'm Nicole, and I was born in Detroit to two parents, 16 years old, very much in love, and I recently talked with my grandma, and she's like, oh yeah, I signed those papers because they loved each other so much. You know, I identify as being part of the Native community here in Detroit. I'm Cherokee and Blackfoot.
My name is CEWatU-M. Some people call me Tootsie, or not, you know. I'm Tootsie at home, I'm CEWatU everywhere else, or vice versa. And I'm just a good person from Detroit, from the block. I'm a Finkel girl. I would definitely rep where I'm from. I'm from Finkel, and a spiritual woman who's going to be a tool into creating this new world that we are creating right now. So that's just who I am, the queen.
So easy, Rhonda Anderson, and I'm a Black African American single mom, single grandma, single great grandma.
My name is Lottie Spady. I'm 46 years old. I'm a mother of two beautiful children. I am Scottish, Black, Italian, Native American. I just like to say stuff like that. People say stuff like that.
My legal name is Sonia Green. My spiritual name is Sana, and Sana means shining with a bright light. And that I use that name because it helps me to remember my purpose. And so I identify myself as an educator and a healer, a woman of African descent with Native American ancestry. I am heterosexual, 47, Generation Xer, graduate of a Black college, and I'm an earth woman.
Charity Hicks. I guess how I identify myself. First of all, socially, culturally, I'm a New African woman. And New African meaning the place of African descended womanhood in the now. Not as opposed to African-centered womanhood, but I think after 27 generations, we're an African amalgamation, so I'm a New African woman, politically and socially.
My name is Myrtle Thompson Curtis. I'm 50 years old. I am a human being first, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, friend, sister, an organizer, a Feed 'em Freedom grower. But human being is first.
Lena Herrada. I live right here at 1819 Leverett in Detroit, and I'm an elected member of the Detroit School Board.
Okay, my name is Nile. I'm 9 years old, and I live on the east side of Detroit, and I'm a dancer and a rapper.
In the 80s, there was a profound destruction of houses and buildings due to fires. Devil's Nights fires, all types of fires. People couldn't pay for anything, so it was burning up everything. So the city would come or a contractor would come and the caterpillar would like pull away the superstructure of homes and leave the foundation kind of intact. And then the foundations on the east side, they had these old boilers, kind of like those old home not natural gas, but like heating oil boilers and coal fired kind of like heating, this old stuff. And they had like their footings were this sand kind of like blocks. And as a child, me and my brothers and sisters and cousins would play in those foundations and play in that, in these boilers, and play in these old home heating furnaces. And now that I think about it and how I used to sit in the soil and we used to throw the sand and we would come home and sand would be all in your hair and in your clothes, and my father would make us shake out our clothes. So we'd be like partially dressed on the side of the house trying to shake out all this stuff. And I remember the oily smell of it and the reason that was like wrapped up in it. And now I'm appreciating like, wow, as a child, like who, I didn't know, but now I'm like, I wouldn't even go next to a site, an old industrial site, but I played in industrial ruins. And I kept now thinking about what was I exposed to and how's that impacting my life and what either carcinogens or, but as a child you just don't know, and it was play. It was our curiosity and exploration of our environment, living in Detroit.
Part of my world kind of got turned upside down when I went to visit the Heidelberg Project when I was like 11, and I had never seen anything like that before, and so I was just like, I was blown away. I had no idea that that was art, and art could like just completely transform a space, and so that was one instance of just really seeing how transformed an environment could be through public art.
Do what you need to.
Come here.
It's not funny. I'm not laughing.
It's not funny because you can't run away from money. So yeah, I went to Nataki to leave a schoolhouse, and there we also had like imagination-scapes, you know, like just all these pretend imaginary things that like seem very, very real. Yeah, we had an island and a reef on the playground, and you know, just all types of imagination games. Growing up, went to Cass Tech, and that was a huge difference for me in what I had been used to in terms of like my school environment and where I spent most of the time of my day. From Nataki, there was 7 of us who graduated. Very typical class, very small. Everything was like very family oriented, and you know, everybody's right next to each other, very, very close. And then incoming freshman year, there were 1,100 of us at Cass Tech, and I could not have been happier. I was like, oh my God, all of these people to know, to get to know, and like the space seemed huge.
So we grew up at a time where, like, again, the 50s. So there was this whole thing. I mean, we're coming out of the South. The image of blackness wasn't a good image. So first of all, we were Negroes then, and we were colored. Okay, and then I remember listening to Malcolm X on a Sunday. He used to have a radio show on Sundays, and he told us, okay, so if they can be white, then we're going to be black, and so that's what we're going to call ourselves. No more Negroes, we're black. And I remember like, whoa. See, because black would get your butt whooped. If you called somebody black at that time, that was fighting words, and so you didn't want to be black. You didn't want to be associated with the idea of a black. So that took a major shift in everyone's mind. And I remember the resistance from like my dad. My dad would have nothing to do with that. He didn't want anything black. My dad didn't want any association with Africa. I remember and it was like when we were just kind of trying to find ourselves. I remember being in school and high school and trying to figure out, where did black people come from? That's just how we didn't know. And only thing that was in a book were probably about 2 pages on slavery, and that was it. I actually thought that black people were born into the universe as slaves. I thought that was the extent of our any and everything. And then it was about and image, little girl. I was a dark-skinned little girl with nappy hair, and that was just not. You were just not. My mom loved me, my dad loved me, and they probably thought I was a pretty little girl. I never heard them say it, but it was hair, and so all I remember is pressing my hair, and that was traumatic because it took the straightening comb, and I had burns. Burns and all this, and then after my mom then there was no one to do it, and hair. So hair was important, and skin color was important, and I remember the different ways that they treated light skin and dark skin. So all of those things were important in how I felt about myself. So I felt like I was not a pretty little girl. I thought I was just a very ugly little girl, and I was skinny, and eventually I had to take all of that and make a decision to myself.
I think that my environment really helped set the foundation for who I'm becoming, who I needed to become to make it through this world. So I just say it's been more positive than negative. But there were definitely doubts that came about from interactions with people, interactions with family, interactions with school authorities, teachers, what have you, that took me a while to get over. But for the most part, it's been positive.
My connection with nature and the environment has been very positive for me. I guess because I'm very independent. I'm very independent. And growing up with my grandmother, who always led the foundation of how to do things, how to succeed. You're going to do A, B, C, D. If you do this, this, and that, you'll turn out to be a very positive person, have a great outlook. I've always been very confident. And, but I always help lead everybody else, so, make them just as confident as me. I'm always helping somebody else all the year. Like I said, I'm always helping my sisters, everybody in the neighborhood. Like, everybody, we can all come together and do this together. But going from that foundation with, living with my grandmother, with her Pine Bluff experience from Arkansas, like, if you have a garden, start celebrating, give everybody something to eat in the neighborhood, start eating basically the fruits and vegetables is very good for you. You can start off with a good foundation. She always stressed that. You always got to have that good foundation.
This is my environment, and this is the natural environment of Detroit. And, I dug out my lawn, and I dug out all the things that were here in order to plant these things that grow wild and don't need water and can't be killed. I did this in a therapeutic measure when Detroit first voted in casinos, because we knew we didn't want them, but we got them, and we knew that our industry was leaving us, but in order to bring something that would exploit the people and create vice and create scarcity where we once had abundance. I was brokenhearted, and someone recommended that I garden, and I took it to heart and dug out everything and planted. So my relationship to the environment is one that is that I look to for healing, that I look to for advice, because the garden, the land knows what to do. So I have really followed advice of the land. The land talks to you, and it knows what to do. It knows when to shed its leaves, and it knows when to get warm. It knows when to shut down, it knows when to flourish and come forth, and I just followed the advice of the land.
We didn't have like industrial things in our neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, like pollution. We didn't have that, you know. Normally the pollution was of the mind, and the violence and drugs and you know, the attacks, you know, the robberies. I remember our house being broken into multiple times, you know, and when they would break into it, they would just just do the nastiest things, you know, like, you know. So when I was a little girl, I was about 11. I saw the first my first person get shot in my face. Soon after that, you know,
The other oldest
yeah,
got killed.
oldest got killed in front of our house, who was the handyman that, you know, who just fixed our house, you know. My mom was a single parent, so there was no, you know, like, we didn't have money to just rent, you know, pay contractors to come and fix the house. You know, there was a lot of things wrong with the house. There was so much wrong with that house. And I actually watched it kill my mama, you know, like literally, like it was killing her, you know. And it was, you know, that was the house was really stressful to her.
Lots of friends, lots of grandmothers, mothers, aunties on the porch constantly in the summertime while we were playing, feeling very safe. At that time, Detroit, when I was a young girl, Detroit was dealing with the rodent problem. So that was one of the scarier parts of being a kid in the city as a young girl, the rodent problem. But eventually that was taken care of through the changing of garbage cans. So, but we played in the alley when I was a kid. The alleys were open, they were relatively clean because the neighbors still drove their cars to their garages through the alley. So we rode our mini bikes, we played tag, we played hide and seek, from the front of the house to the back of the house. It was a lot of room to play, grow and develop friendships. We walked to school in groups. I remember feeling very safe in my family and my home. I remember being kept out of conversations a lot, though. Hush, be quiet, this is grown folk talk. A lot of that. I remember the distinct, as a little girl, how I was supposed to act, as opposed to how my brothers seemed to have free reign.
You would never say you was hungry, you know, to other people or ask other people for food, because you just didn't do that. You just would be hungry. So I remember, you know, spent a lot of time just in the neighborhood as a little girl. You know, my mom would, whenever I would cry so much whenever she would go to work. I would cry and just cry and cry. And sometimes she would take me to work with her because I would just cry so bad. Or some days she, you know.
That's when we were at Alternatives for Girls.
You know, she was working at Alternatives for Girls, and I would go to work with her sometimes, and every day there was a adventure with the women who were there. Many fights and stuff, and me right in the middle of it and stuff like that. You know, but everywhere I went, you know, people did take care of me.
At one point at Howard University, we had to walk down this huge hill. We had to walk up and down this huge hill to get to campus every day. And so across the street from this hill, there was a baseball diamond next to a high school, Cardoza High School. And so one day, the fence around this baseball field was removed, and I can remember standing at the top of the hill, walking down and feeling oh so free, and like I just wanted to run. Like I've never felt anything like that freeing in my life, and I'm like, why do I feel this good? Why do I feel so free? Why do I just want to run? And it hit me like halfway down the hill. I'm like, oh, the fence is missing. And so, like, that made me really, really, really understand, like, the psychological effects of what you see on how you behave and how you feel, because I literally ran. And then, you know, next day I find they're building a bigger fence. So I was very kind of sad.
My mom had bought a house on the east side of Detroit, and she was very excited and proud of herself for buying her own house. And you know, at that that place, I you know, most of the neighborhood is African American, and like in that environment, you know, everybody saw me as white. So I think that's pretty true in a lot of the environments that I was in. I actually moved. My house caught fire multiple times. The houses around us caught fire, and I moved out to like New Baltimore area, Chesterfield. There was kind of nothing out there at the time, just some apartments, and while our house was getting fixed. And it was probably about a year and a half, I would think. And at that point, like, there were more woods around me. There was like a creek. My cousin actually lived out there, and maybe that's why we moved out there too, my blended family cousin. And we would go down to this little creek. It may have even been man-made, I don't know, but we would catch crayfish and frogs, and there'd be birds, and you know, I found myself there a lot. I also found myself like dumpster diving, finding treasures, and you know, it was like some good adventures with my cousin.
Well, my mom has about 3 or 4 gardens in different parts of our neighborhood, and we have a lot of different type of gardens that my mom did not make in the environment that I live around. And so I usually go and help. And in my neighborhood we have a lot of rabbits and little animals, and I get to play with them, and sometimes we take them in as pets. Like one time we had 14 cats because there were so many cats.
Thinking back, like the way the path evolved, I can now say that I think I was concerned about the environment that the young people, when I was first doing media activism and poetry, a lot of their poetry was about their environment. You know, now that I have a better understanding of the environment as it relates to where you live, work, play, you know, how it was to go to school in these areas, how it was to live in the North End in these areas, what it meant to, I mean, like our program didn't have a lot of money. It was like, what was the environment? The kids, before we painted the room that was the teen center, it was like a big refrigerator warehouse. The kids would go in and come out like dirty. They'd come out covered in dirt, and they were like, oh yeah, we were playing, you know, that was their teen center. So I think now I can see that I was concerned about, you know, their environment and what it was doing to them, but I didn't have the language for it then that I do now.
In terms of environmental factors that led to my activism, I think I just organically got into it through hooking up with DJ Sakari and the 5E Gallery, and being interested in hip hop and having the space that focused on hip hop. I just wanted to see more women have a voice, and so I just created this event called the Foundation to have more women have a voice, you know, a space where they could perform. Now it's evolved, you know, we go to universities and do talks and things like that, but I think initially it was really just not wanting to complain anymore and wanting to see a difference, and being frustrated with wanting someone else to do something about it, and so just doing something about it. And so I kind of just accidentally, if you will, got into this activism, and I didn't see myself as an activist until I went to Chicago Freedom School. We did a course there, like a week seminar. And like it literally changed my life because there were now words, there was a vocabulary for all these things that we have been doing and thinking. And I was able to understand that I'm an activist after that point. And so I think that environmentally, just seeing a lack of a woman's presence and a woman's voice really led to me just feeling strongly that something needs to be done about this. And in terms of doing something about it, connecting with DJ Sakari, who had a space for hip hop, and just like being like, look, this makes sense to do this here. If you're upholding the culture of hip hop, let's, uphold the entire culture, which includes women.
Just coming back, I'm like, I can truly appreciate and value everything that's here, and then be like, okay, well, how can this be better? And how can this be even not just made better, but restored? There's so much that has just kind of been let go, and we can see how nature and the built environment really interact. Nature always wins, and it wins quickly when you're not inhabiting a building or a home.
I'm really interested in the children in nature movement, is getting children outside, because for me, spending time in nature has always been really healing. When I had a hard day at work or a hard day at school, I would just go and sit by the river or by a lake or a stream, or go walk in the forest or go ride a bike, and it always just made me feel so much more calm, so much better, and my perspective changed. So from that experience, I started to think of nature differently once I became an adult. When I was in my 30s, I became an adult, and I started to think of nature differently. And then when I started to belly dance, surprisingly, as I started to belly dance, I just started to have a feeling that the dance, that I was one with nature, and that the dance connected me to nature. When I would dance and it was quiet music playing and we were moving, I really felt grounded. I felt that I had a spiritual connection to nature that didn't necessarily have to be me touching a tree or riding a bike, but I really felt that belly dancing was somehow once used for people to connect, for women to connect to nature. And once I started belly dancing, I started to feel that I had a responsibility to help the earth, to heal the earth, to work toward a change in how human beings interacted with nature.
The garden I have in the back is a memorial to things and places and people that I have loved and that are no longer except exist in my backyard and in spirit. I have an evergreen tree that my late brother planted when it was only a little tiny sprig, and it's grown higher than the house now. That was Earth Day of maybe 1983. And I have address plates from the houses on 20th Street, which were torn down to make way for the bridge. And the people sold their homes and moved away, and I took the address plates from there and put them on my back fence. And I have bricks from under the bridge where the street was cleared away. And I have pictures from artists who have had a big influence on my life. And I have a garden to Lasker Smith, who was a great mentor to me, the Red Garden. Mm-hmm. And I have a garden to Marty Quiros, who was a dear friend who loved my backyard. And I have a pond back there that's on and off again. And some cedars that I planted to make a fence that wouldn't be a divisive fence, but a gentle divider. And so I have everything that's back there represents something or someone or someplace that was very important. Everything back there that is planted for a reason.
I don't like to see the abandoned houses and all the burnt down houses, and then all the cussing that people spray paint on beautiful art.
When we were growing up, one of the amazing things, and I'm not exactly sure why it was, but I think it had something to do with my parents and how they were raised, because I'm sure they were raised a lot on the outside, because they were, like I said, they were sharecroppers. Everything was done on the outside, you know. So for me, they would take us to parks. So one of the parks we went to a lot was Elizabeth Park, way out, I think it's in Monroe, Michigan. And of course, remember this is segregated north, so we went to places that would allow us to go there. So Elizabeth Park was one of the parks that let black folks go there. We went to Belle Isle too, and I remember an elephant on Belle Isle, and it was in cage. You know where the police station is on Belle Isle? Outside of the police station, you don't really know? But there was a fenced-in area, and there was an elephant, and we could just go to the island and go walk over to this elephant. But also on the island, it was segregated. So blacks had like one side, and whites had another side. So that far side over by the Canadian over that you could look right over, that's where we would go. And even then, it was like one half of that. But we went to parks.
So fun.
Yeah, we really had good times, and we also went to Ridge Park. So we spent a lot of time, again, we just as a little girl, a lot of time outdoors. Now that changed drastically as I got older, because once you start working, then work keeps you inside, school keeps you inside. So I wasn't out much at all.
Becoming a community leader is still very new for me. I'm more comfortable with speaking on subjects that I know about myself, what's happened to bring me to this point. Yes, I struggle with the feelings of inadequacy. It pushed me to go back to school. It's pushing me. My self-esteem, sometimes I had to see myself through the eyes of others, because I didn't have the confidence that others had in me. They saw something, and you can do this, and really. And so I had to embrace that and not just see me through what I saw in the mirror, like it wouldn't happen. So there were times, and oftentimes, to let somebody else's belief in me carry me to that place where I should be at this point. And I think maybe a lot of people feel that way. Because when you step off that stage, or you step out of that classroom or whatever, like, I wonder how I did. And then you'll get some feedback, you know if you did well, you know if you did poorly. But just really trying to be true to myself and not trying to be someone else, because that was such a struggle for so long, you know. But just believing enough in myself through the encouragement of others. That has been such a spiritual thing for me, because I did not have the confidence. I carried a lot of shame. I carried a lot of, I don't know, you know, unsurety and things into my adulthood, you know. So I think becoming a mother was my greatest confidence booster ever. But then as they got older, it's the scariest thing ever. Here I was, because I was a single mother after 11 years of having a partner, and I got these kids who are going into teenage years, and they're 4 against me. I ain't gonna make it.
So there was about 3 years that I didn't work because the labor thing had gotten so bad, because we filed EEOC charges against our local, against wage, race, and sex discrimination, and they came down on it so hard. I stopped working depression, it just became too stressful to work with, and that threw us into, and during that time. Okay, sorry.
There's a big disconnect from my generation to her generation. There's huge moral connection, value of yourself and your people, connect, you know what I'm saying? Like all of that, I don't remember, you know, the want to do anything, really. So I think one of it was just really being a student at Instant Roma Institute. That was really like a lot of the push towards activism, you know what I'm saying, and
your morning
and
rituals
being active in the community. So if it didn't start there, I don't know where it would have came from. And then I really kind of didn't have no choice, because here she is, you know. So I would, you know, be a little girl at home, and I would, you know, every day she would come home from work with these stories of how we need to be proactive and how this has happened and it's up to us, and, you know, things like that. And so I would hear these things every day. So I, you know, but there, you know, in my moments, there weren't really movements that I could relate to be a part of. So where it really started was really just being connected to what was happening in the community. What was that was really the biggest, with the violence, you know, that was happening in the neighborhood. Why were people being discriminated against? Why were there SWAT teams in my backyard? Why were there always police brutality in my community? You know, and why do we treat each other this way? You know, so that, a lot of that was on my mind. And when you have personal, close people to you disappear due to, you know, all of these systemic things, you get to ask yourself, like, what the hell is really going on? So I just started to go to meetings. There weren't really movements I would go to. I just started to go to meetings with my mom, and, you know, and try to be proactive in the best way I can. And then that really just sparked my ruh, my soul.
I feel like I've had a sense of like responsibility towards other people and to the environment for a really long time. You know, I was trying to think of, you know, when it started, and my stepdad told me we were having some kind of deep conversation, and he said, well, I think that you were more mature at 6 than I am now, or something like that. I think you were born more mature than me. But I just had this like internal sense that, like, you know, our purpose is to be here for other people. Like, and that might mean that we need to, you know, make sure that there's food for generations to come, or that there's water for people to drink for generations to come, or that we can just treat each other good. But you know, there's a lot of pain that people are dealing with, and there's a lot of suffering, and I think that if we can, you know, contribute to healing and making this world a better place for our children and, you know, their children. Like I joked before that I want to just be a grandma. I just skipped like the whole being a mom thing. Being a mom's great now. Like that's before I was a mom. But I just want to be a healthy grandparent for my grandchildren.
If I were to give any advice, I would say that it's really important for us all to love ourselves, to know ourselves, and not be bound by the images that we see on television, or the images we see in magazines, or even necessarily by the images that you may see in your community that you like or don't like. We all have come here for a very particular reason. We all have specific gifts and talents. And for me, one of the ways to connect your gifts and talents is by spending time in nature. whether, even if it's not connected to the environment. I think that being outside helps us to experience ourselves separate from any boxes that we may have been taught.
When I ran my girls group, I shouldn't even say when I ran my girls group, I'm about to discredit what I just said. We had double X Chrome, and in the beginning I honestly felt like I gotta teach these girls something. They need to know something about life, and here I am, I'm older, I need to give that to them. But you know what? I learned that I learned just as much from them as I hope they learned from me, and it was through being vulnerable, being truthful, being authentic, and get a mentor. That was the best thing I did. I asked my mentor to be my mentor, and she told me no, but I made her my mentor anyway. So find a mentor, someone whose work you respect and believe in, a strong woman. Get more than one. You know, always surround yourself with successful people that, or successful as you feel success to be, that have integrity, that you know, stand for something, and just fly under their wing, whether they know you're there or not, and learn as much as you can.
I think young women today need to step back and start looking at the past and figure out where they come from and where they want to go, because some of these young women today they're not really, to me, they're not really on a good intellectual level to figure out what they really want. Some of them see somebody else and say, I want to be like somebody, I want to be. No, you need to be yourself. Kind of step back a little bit and figure out what you want to be first, or where you want to go, without just jumping into it trying to do something that somebody else is doing.
Be very thoughtful about what you're doing. Don't rush into anything, just take your time. And there's definitely a lot of time to develop themselves first and really build some of their strengths first. I will also say to them to try to get involved in intergenerational circles.
Our ability to function as women in a society of profound hierarchies is we're constantly being bombarded with messages to say this is your place, this is your frame, this is who we say you are. And so when you become uncomfortable, you're actually rewriting relationships, and you show up as a model, right? So people start looking at you like, I want to be like her. And so you're constantly dealing with the things that confront us and down-press us and shape us less than who we are. And that's why being uncomfortable is such, it's almost kind of like a sacred space to get in. Normally when women speak, there's this notion that you're emotional, and that you're hysterical, and that you're out of control. But what is wrong with being emotional? What is wrong? What is so wrong with emotional intelligence? Why is empathy and sympathy so cast to the margins? Why the place of nurturance and securing life is seen as less than? So I think being uncomfortable is a good place to be in. And definitely rewrite scripts, like rock it out, like question authority, be the example, be the model, and definitely go forward and be the best human being you can be.
That's such a painful question for me, because I lost a young person to suicide a few years ago who just beautiful, who felt alone and isolated, and I can so relate to those feelings. And then as I got older, I understood there were folks just waiting for me to reach out, or who were just a little bit intimidated because my teenage or my roughness as a young person. What seemed to me be insolence was really fear on my part as a young woman. And so just to embrace the path that you're on. It's a path, and it will lead somewhere, and you get to decide where it goes, because it doesn't end, it goes. And so, just to really be patient with yourself.
You know, it really helps to keep me going, to think that the work I'm doing is preventing trauma from being passed down. So substance abuse prevention work, suicide prevention work, it's hard work to do, but I see it working. Like I see young people like really confident in who they are, and connected with their communities, and connected with people who can help support them through these things that happen in life. You know, you can't completely prevent trauma, but being able to heal from it and grow from it, and continue like to promote that healing work. You know, I've seen young people now doing that, and supporting healing in the community.
My daughter Alejandra told me last night that she has not talked to her roommate in several days because he said that women are stupid, and she's trying to figure out a way to break through that. It's somebody that she really loved, but when he got drunk, he said women are stupid, and the twins are talking about how women are so put down, and what kinds of things that they're going to do to raise women up. And I didn't even realize that these are things that people are going through right now. But I would say defend yourselves, figure out ways to defend yourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, in every possible way. And listen to old women like us. We love you.
Well, I think young women are faced with probably some of the most challenging times, even in my lifetime, and that's a long time, right? Because there's this difference. When I was young, we were faced with the biggest question I think that we were faced with. Well, first of all, we weren't even sexual, so we were the sexual object. So we didn't have, this thing where you had feelings or orgasms or things like that. You just were there, available. So young ones now, they have this freedom that I think they have to come to grips with and figure out just what are they going to do with their sexual selves. That's one. I think then they also have, even still, there's these remnants of the old times before, which was, well, I need a man, and I need a man. I think coming from where I come from and being a single parent, I think it takes two to raise a baby, first of all. There was a time when maybe I didn't think that, but I think children need mothers and fathers. It is not necessary for it to be in one, both of them be in one location, but they need those two things critically. So, I think that a young woman should question, her own sexuality and what it is that she's going to want and what's going to be important in her life. And if it's going to be that relationship with a man, then what, how she fits in as an individual and independent in this two partnership relationship, And I'm even at this point kind of questioning the whole kind of love thing, like I gotta be in love, I'm thinking right now, baby, going back a couple of 100 years when you made a partnership, like it was a business deal, so especially if there's children involved, so the children, I think, are critical questions right now, and the type of environment that the little ones grow up in. So women being the main nurturer those are going to be some of the biggest questions and concerns that she's going to have to be faced with.
Really, for me, I think the advice that I would give is to, because right now is women, like my generation of women, we struggle with self-worth so much, you know, and right now what we're doing is trying to maintain this kind of like man role. Like, I need to be tough, what it is, you know, it's not too much feminine, you know, feelings, you know, that we can embrace within ourselves right now. It's because the man has been, you know, so absent or been so kind of like just straight disrespectful, you know, and you know, what you see, what's the image you see that's portraying yourself on media and things like that. And we've actually like stomached those, you know, impressions of ourselves, and then we act out on it through our behavior, which is so tough. I got to be really tough, you know. So I'm cutting into, I have to act like the man, you know, and it's kind of like, you know, which can drive a woman crazy, really, when it's time to, when you really want to, you know, want a partnership, like she said, you know. So it's, so really, you know, what I do is just try to study myself, you know, embrace the things that I like, you know, and know, you know, do some type of meditation saying like, I'm beautiful, you know, like Mama Sandra told me, like, look in the mirror, you're beautiful, hug yourself, you are delicious, whatever, you know, however you may, you know what I'm saying, that'll make you smile, you know, and doing those as a ritual, because it is such an attack on women and our feelings and things like that. And also what I do, I tell other, if I could say this to other women, you see younger children, you see younger, you know, little girls. What I do is, every little girl I see, I say, even the darkest of dark, you know, the kinkiest haired little baby who I just think is so beautiful, who might have not heard that she was beautiful or got a hug today, you know. Anytime I see a baby, whoever, how old, no matter how old she is, I say, hey, pretty girl. And, you know, and to see their smile, and when I say, hey, pretty girl, they, you know, they be like, oh, how, you know, like, you noticed me, you know, or, oh my goodness, she, you know, she called me pretty, you know, because a lot of us don't hear that we're pretty, you know, and we're beautiful and things like that. So I can say, really, my advice is to start with yourself, but then also revert back to these baby that's coming up right now. So you see a baby, you tell her, hey, pretty girl, and you watch the smile that comes on her face, because she's going to remember that.